Bienvenue donc.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this session on educating taxpayers.
To all, and welcome to the session on taxpayer education, a key tool to increase voluntary compliance. So as I will be speaking in French, I invite non-French speaking participants to switch on the English or Spanish interpretation channel to be able to follow the session. Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this session on educating taxpayers, a key tool to increase voluntary compliance. I have the honor to facilitate this session this afternoon with my colleague from OECD, Mr. Jones-Stitt, main advisor as part of the International Relations and Development Department. This session includes a high level of participation. We are delighted about this, which also shows the interest for the topic of educating taxpayers. I might leave or let the participants to change their channel in order to activate interpretation into English or into Spanish so they can follow the session. I will seize this opportunity to share my screen. So maybe some clarifications. This session is open to the media and the public. Just a few words on the agenda for this afternoon. My colleague Joe-Stitt and myself will first present the OECD report on taxpayer education, which was published just a few weeks ago. The publication date was November the 24th, 2021. Then we will give the floor to representatives of Togo, South Africa, and Japan, who will present to us their initiatives around taxpayer education in their respective countries. And we will conclude with a Q&A session during which you will have the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. I wish you all a great session. And to start in the best way, I suggest we start with a poll. On screen, you can see the poll in the three languages, English, French, and Spanish. The poll will only appear in English on your screen. This is why we put the three different languages on the presentation. I will let you check the polling question. According to you, which of the following is the primary objective of taxpayer education initiatives? First choice, raising awareness of taxpayers on their tax rights and obligations. Second answer, teaching citizens about the role and place of taxation in society as a whole. Third answer, assisting taxpayers in fulfilling their tax compliance obligations. I'm going to launch the poll and I will give you a few seconds to answer it. You can do so by selecting the answer that feels more relevant to you, the main objective of taxpayer education initiatives. I will give you a few seconds and then I will show the results on screen. We can comment them briefly together before we get into the OECD report.
Donc, je pense qu'on arrive à la moitié. Donc
I think we have received half of the answers. We have quite a packed agenda. We have quite a few participants. More than half have answered the poll. I'm going to leave a few seconds more and then I will close the poll. And I suggest we look at the results together of your votes. As I said, the poll appears in English, but I included in the slide the different possibilities. I think we're going to take a break and look at the results and the answers that you have provided to this question. As you can see, there's quite a wide range of results. The first answer received the most votes, raising awareness of taxpayers on their tax rights and obligations. Others have also answered teaching citizens about the role and place of taxation in society. As you can see, this variety of answers shows that the objective differs depending on the targeted audience, depending on the experience of the administration in educating taxpayers, and also depending on the resources available to implement those initiatives and the existing partnerships in order to implement this education of taxpayers. It is rare that a same initiative can meet all objectives. That's why it's particularly interesting that the OECD work done on this. As I said, we recently published a new publication on taxpayer education, and this new publication is integrated in larger works from OECD on tax citizenship, which aims at better understanding what motivates taxpayers to want to pay tax. As part of those factors, which have an impact on the will of taxpayers to pay taxes, we realized that the perception of the legitimacy of the tax administration had a huge impact, but also the difficulty to understand how the tax system works from citizens. This new report, which you can see on screen, which was published in November 2021, is an extension of a first report that we published in 2015. At the time, this report covered different initiatives around education of taxpayers in different countries. This time, we've been much more comprehensive. This report analyzes 140 taxpayer education initiatives rolled out in 59 countries. As you can see on screen, there's quite a diverse array of geographical breakdown in those initiatives. 45.8 initiatives covered in the report took place or were implemented in rich countries, but there are also, there is another half, which is implemented in development countries or developing countries. The first report only focused on developing countries. However, in the second report, we wanted to be much more comprehensive and more balanced in terms of region breakdown for the analysis of those initiatives implemented throughout the world. As you can see, Europe represents 30%, South America 19%. So as you can see, it's quite interesting to note the nature, type of initiatives implemented and the way they're being implemented and why. This report is very rich. It covers different types of approaches when educating taxpayers through magazines, TV shows, radio shows, mobile units, different ways to reach out to isolated populations that are not often in contact with the tax administration. So a whole lot of different types of initiatives are analyzed in the report. I won't be able to mention them all, but this is the reason why in the second part of this presentation, we plan on presenting country presentations to illustrate the report. This report, through the analysis of the 140 analysis, helped draft a typology of initiatives. We've included in three main categories: teaching tax, second category, communicating tax to raise awareness, third category, assisting with tax with practical assistance. I'm now going to give the floor to my colleague Justit, who will now present those three categories, the three types that we have drafted in the published report. Joe will be speaking in English. I invite the French speakers to activate interpretation in order to follow Joe's presentation.
Merci, Samia, and yes, I'll just take you through quickly the kind of three main approaches that we found in some of the challenges and how we try and put this together to help people thinking about setting up taxpayer education initiatives. So first of all, we identify a teaching tax category. This is the most obvious when we think about education, and we categorize this as where we're using more traditional teaching methods. So there's a lot of kind of classroom education, looking at the use of webinars, and we're using that kind of way to engage in more complex discussion. So this often looks at either the role of the tax system, that's especially where we see it used with students and young people looking at being future taxpayers. So what's the role of the tax system in society? Or we see it on some of the technicalities of specific parts of the tax system. So we see that a lot working with especially businesses, really working through webinars, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, to help them work through the kind of technicalities of specific parts of the tax system. One of the commonalities around this, this category is it's a much more extended engagement with taxpayers or future taxpayers when we were looking at students than the other ones. And one of the consequences of that is we see it can be much more resource intensive than other initiatives. I just saw the note, yes, the presentations will be available online after the conference. The second big category that we identify is communicating tax to raise awareness. And this works at a higher level than the teaching tax initiatives. We see it a bit more akin to advertising in many ways. And so here we see it's much more shorter engagement that kind of plants the seed to engage further on tax issues, or we see the kind of nudging type of engagements to nudge behavior to better engagement in the tax system. We see here a lot of the initiatives are looking at how you can strengthen that relationship between taxpayers and tax administration. One of the big things, how to make the tax administration seem more approachable and less scary. We've seen some previous research that there's a lot of fear and misunderstanding around the tax administration from taxpayers. And so if you can break down those barriers, it really makes a big difference. We see a lot of initiatives trying to kind of take the tax administration out into places where people are more relaxed and open to those kind of engagements. Next slide, please. And then the third kind of big area is assisting with tax. And we see this as kind of the learning by doing approach, which is something, for those of you who saw the Tax Inspectors Without Borders initiative before this, the learning by doing approach is an incredibly valuable tool, we find. And we see that in a lot of the taxpayer education initiatives we see here. We see this as a category where tax administrations really work with taxpayers, guide them through the practicalities of paying taxes, especially where you have new digital tools being introduced, and very often where there's vulnerable groups who may otherwise struggle to engage with the tax system. And this can be especially important, not just in terms of paying taxes, but also where being part of the tax system is a vital entry point for receiving benefits and being able to kind of access support from the state as well. Next slide, please. So the report goes into a lot more detail in each of these approaches, indeed subdivides them further, and there's a huge annex that you can wade through all of the initiatives. But there's a few common threads that we think can come out from this that are really useful. The first one is that the biggest challenge that many of the initiatives we saw face is identifying the target audience and how to reach them. You're usually trying to reach people that the tax administration doesn't speak to already. So relying on the existing tools that the tax administration have can be really difficult. And this leads on to the second point in terms of finding partners beyond the tax administration is often one of the big features of a successful initiative, because they are partners who are often trusted or have the relationships with the target audience. Now, the type of partner depends on the target audience. We've seen from our examples, those partners can be elsewhere in government, especially kind of Ministry of Education or teachers, where you're looking for students, but also NGOs working with vulnerable populations. Business associations especially can be important for reaching out to small, medium-sized enterprises. But we also see the use of musicians, celebrities for reaching the kind of the mass market and that piece in terms of making the tax administration process seem less scary. And we also see that partnerships are often a vital piece of being able to make initiatives really grow and become sustainable over time because of the challenging access to resources many tax administrations have. And that goes to the point that it's a long-term project, is taxpayer education. Changing taxpayer culture isn't something that can happen overnight. So projects need to be realistic in terms of what they can achieve over what period. We did our first report back in 2015, and all but one of the initiatives we saw in the first report in 2015 are still running, and the one that isn't running has kind of evolved into something new as well. So we see that where countries are doing this and making the commitment, it's a long-term commitment to this, and that again comes to the point that probably the most common challenge is securing those resources to be able to deliver these programs. Just a point in terms of the timing of the delivery of initiatives, where initiatives are linked to specific deadlines in the tax calendar, it's obviously obvious that you need to get your timing right. If you're trying to remind people the filing deadline is coming up, you have a very hard deadline to remember. But it's also important to think not just of what the timing importance might be for within the tax administration that's trying to run the initiative, but also what the timing importance might be for the target audience. So a really interesting piece of feedback from some of the initiatives working with students is if they tried to deliver education on tax as schools were coming up to exam periods, there was much less engagement and much less willingness to engage because students were much more focused on their exams. So think about timing not only from, if you're linking it to aspects of your tax system, but also the audience you're looking to reach out to, is the timing right for them? And then the final point is, there's really limited monitoring and evaluation of these programs. Only half the initiatives covered in the report had any form of review, and less than 20% had an external evaluation. We think there's much greater scope to bring in better monitoring and evaluation to really learn and understand how these programs are working, because they're trying to do a lot in many cases, and we don't really have a clear understanding of how they are working, and especially how these programs could be improved to give maximum value. There is, however, a strong perception that these programs do work. 75% of the respondents saw the programs that they're involved with having a large or very large impact on increasing people's sense of moral obligation to pay taxes, for example. So we think there's a lot of good things in here to help identify the challenges. But it's not just about identifying and analyzing the data from all of these examples that we have. It tries to convert these findings into a process to help those who are looking to design initiatives or how they might want to enhance existing ones. So we set out kind of the 4 phases that you need to go through in terms of designing an efficient and effective initiative. So the first one is to be really clear on what the objective is. As we saw from the poll, there can be different objectives that you're looking to achieve. So being really clear in terms of what you want to do with initiative is really important. And the best examples we saw were very clear in what they wanted to do and who they were trying to target. Checking the resources available. Once you have your objective, do you have the resources to enable you to actually do that? If you don't, you may need to look at going back to, well, do you need to refine your objective a bit more so you can get something that fits within the resources available? Or is it something that you can pilot at a smaller scale and then look to build up over time? So you really need to make sure that the objective and the resources kind of match up. Once you know kind of the scope and aim of what you're trying to do, looking at, well, what exactly is the type of initiative that you need. And that's where we really think the report here can help in terms of helping you guide through what are the, what can you learn from other initiatives that are out there, identify the type, and then tailoring it to fit your local context. So again, thinking in terms of what can you learn from other initiatives where they've had challenges, and what do those challenges look like in your context? What other partners are available to you? What are the difficulties of reaching your target audience, and who is most trusted to work with? And then each of these phases we accompany with a few key questions to help stimulate your thinking and identify how the report can help. So where can you find it? It's available in English, French, and Spanish. It's online. These links will take you through there, where you'll get the presentation available on our website after this, or indeed just Google search OECD and the title of the report there, and you'll get taken through. But that's enough from those of us who kind of looked at these at the higher level. I'll now pass over to Samia, who will introduce our speakers to look at what's happened in country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. So I will now give the floor to Mrs. Issa Falilatu, Head of Taxpayer Education Section at the Office Togolais des Recettes. So Mrs. Issa will be speaking in French. So I invite non-French speaking participants to switch on the English or Spanish interpretation channel to be able to follow the Mrs. Issa presentation. Madame Issa, donc c'est à vous. Je vous laisse la parole et je vous laisse nous présenter.
Over to you, Mrs. Issa. I will give you the floor and you can present the Togo experience. As I said, Mrs. Issa works at the Togolese Revenue Office. She's in charge of taxpayers' education and services to users. Over to you, Mrs. Issa.
Est-ce que vous nous entendez?
Can you hear us?
Merci, Samia. Mesdames et messieurs les participantes et participants.
Thank you, Samia. Ladies and gentlemen, participants, I'm delighted to present some initiatives of the Togolese Revenue Office in terms of taxpayers' education. As you know it, paying tax is one of your civil rights, and it's never an easy thing to do. As part of several mechanisms implemented by the OTR that I will present to you, there are several components. One on public awareness raising for taxpayers on tax citizenship, and a project of peer education project on tax compliance, and then a conclusion. The OTR is a merge between customs and tax administrations, including cadastre and property tax. In Togo, we have a tax system that is a declarative self-assessed one, which leaves some margin to all economic operators to calculate taxes themselves and reach out to the tax administration to proceed with payment. This can be done at the cashier in the office of the tax office, online, or through wire transfer or mobile payment. One of the objectives of the OTR is to have a service of quality to taxpayers. This quality of service can be perceived through welcoming taxpayers, but not only, also through communication and awareness raising, active training, and simplification of tax rules and procedures. And with this approach, the OTR has created a communication and service to users department in order to educate taxpayers and promote tax compliance. In order to implement those activities, the department and management has implemented initiatives including a magazine, a program to reach out to taxpayers and educate on tax compliance, and peer education project on tax compliance. As part of this presentation, we will just present to you the two latter activities: awareness raising, engaging with taxpayers and the public, and educating them on tax compliance. So why raising awareness? This strategy was implemented to promote tax compliance to new entrepreneurs and also to lead them to better comply with their tax obligations on time, because in Togo, we don't have this tax culture. Tax itself so far was not part of the culture of the Togo population. This is why we decided to create those awareness raising programs by choosing the areas where the population is most concentrated and where most of the activities are carried out. With regards to trainings, we work with the departments on the whole territory, tax and customs departments throughout the territory. And we try to identify defaultings, new companies, those who created their company recently, and SMEs, small and medium enterprises with a turnover that is less than 60 million CFA francs. So what do we do with these? We lead actions. These are awareness raising actions. So we organize this awareness raising in partnership with state supporting structures that exist in Togo, such as structures targeting making informal sector more formal, DOSI, CGA, Agreed Management Center, FNFI, etc. We also celebrate the taxpayer. This is why we have a celebration of the Taxpayer Day, and during that day, we give awards to the best taxpayers in order to encourage them and motivate them in paying their taxes. We also have awareness-raising events organized on local markets, and they have had such impact on the Togolese population that the African Development Bank decided to fund us in 2016 for this type of awareness raising activities on local markets, because in Togo, most women working on markets are local women and don't speak French. This is the reason why the activities that we lead are done in local languages in the neighborhoods and on markets. And those activities are organized in an interactive manner in order to facilitate the understanding of specific contexts around customs and tax administration. And during those events, we also organize sketches to illustrate tax compliance, payment, consent, spontaneousness in paying taxes. Trainings. Those trainings are for SMEs, and SMEs and larger companies are considered as professionals already. Usually, this type of taxpayers know how to declare their turnover at the end of the year and participate in paying taxes.
Next slide, please.
Diapositive suivant. Next slide. Here we have a few slides that will show you what we carry out on the ground, our initiatives in neighborhoods and regions, in villages. This slide shows two things that are happening in Togo. We try to get women involved. Women are the main stakeholders in social and economic development. We also try to involve local authorities. We see that women are neighborhood chiefs and they support us in the awareness raising efforts around populations to get them to pay their taxes. As for the training workshops for local elected representatives, we try to get these elected officials to support us in this awareness raising effort because they are closer to the population. They know them better because sometimes taxes are 100% allocated to local authorities and regional authorities. So they have more sway in persuading them. Next slide. The next slide is already on screen. Isa, can you try to be brief so that other speakers have time to give their presentations as well? So here are the results that we have had between 2015 and 2019. In terms of awareness raising, we have reached 157,876 people so that they registered and they became official formal taxpayers. As for the training of SMEs before COVID, between 2017 and 2019, we provided training to 4,614 businesses. And since COVID, we have trained 2,628 businesses. The information of SMEs, this is given depending on different themes, and you can see the figures, the number of businesses that we've trained. During training, we try to get people to comply voluntarily to tax paying. This has allowed us to build trust between the tax authorities and people, and we have strengthened the relations between taxpayers and tax authorities. So the second project on peer education allows us to help taxpayers convey this information to their peers. Because among peers, among taxpayers, they speak the same language. This is the best way to get in touch with all of the different social categories and worker categories. We try to reach as many people as possible in the public. We really try to target professional taxpayers. So ideally, they need to be able to speak, read, and write in French. And they need to be fluent in at least 2 local languages to become peer trainers, so that they can convince their peers in the local language. This peer trainer needs to be an opinion leader, and they need to be a flawless taxpayer. So activities undertaken on the field, these peer trainers are supposed to raise awareness among their peers. Every year, we try to renew their knowledge depending on the evolution of the finance laws and regarding the implementation of the mandate of the tax administration. During the training, we have the peer training concept. We have the updated tax guide for Togo. We teach them how to communicate efficiently as an educational peer, and there are activities among peers. We tell them about these activities. They are individual interviews, or they can do general awareness raising, and then they send reports to the tax authority. To ensure that these peer trainers carry out the right types of activities, we have a platform where peer trainers will send all of the activities that they've carried out throughout the week or throughout the day. To conclude, these programs have allowed to formalize businesses, to reduce the informality of these businesses, to increase the tax base, and to incentivize voluntary tax compliance. Today, our goal is to implement new strategies in order to reach small individual enterprises that are often informal or not registered. We want to help them to contribute to the activities of local and regional authorities. Thank you, Samia. Thank you very much, Madame Issa, for this presentation, which was extremely clear and comprehensive, and it has allowed us to see successful initiatives in terms of taxpayer awareness. I am now going to give the floor to our Japanese representative. He is going to speak English, and this is the reason why I am going to encourage my French-speaking colleagues to turn on interpretation so that they can follow this presentation.
Director, International Operation Division at the National Tax Agency of Japan. Over to you, Mr. Kimushi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Samia. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Toshiyuki Mochi, Director of the International Operations Division of the National Tax Agency of Japan. In today's presentation, I would like to explain the National Tax Agency's role in tax education in Japan. Japan adopts a self-assessment system for most of its national taxes. Under this system, taxpayers calculate their own income and their tax amount, and then file a return and make a payment. In order for the self-assessment system to function properly, the NTA does its best to ensure taxpayers are well educated regarding tax payment and understand how to properly fulfill their tax obligations as provided by the law. In order to support this tax return and tax payment system, NTA is working on two pillars. One is improving the tax payment environment, and the other is promoting appropriate and fair tax administration. The tax education is a part of the improving the tax payment environment and is designed to help taxpayers understand the significance and the role of tax payment. The NTA hopes these programs will assist taxpayers with filing and paying taxes correctly on their own, as well as prepare the next generation of taxpayers, which is very important for us, and which is the very important topic today for me. Next slide, please. Let me explain how the NTA plans to implement tax education throughout Japan. The NTA is working on tax education, not only within the NTA, but also for the general public. The NTA does this in cooperation with the public and private sectors, especially schools. Specifically, the NTA works with the Council for Promoting Tax Education, which is an organization established at the national and local levels to assist them with tax education related matters in Japan. The members and main activities are as listed. At the Central Council, meetings are held by the directors from each ministry and agency to discuss and draft the basic policies of tax education for the following year. Then, general meeting is held by the deputy commissioners to agree on the basic policies. Finally, the Central Council disseminates and communicates the agreed upon basic policies to relevant organizations. The local councils also hold a general meeting in May or June to report and evaluate the previous year's activities and decide on the current year's activities. Next page, please. This chart shows the relationship between institutions related to tax education at the national and local levels. From left to right, organizations of the National Tax Agency, which are purple in the chart, and organizations of local governments with jurisdictions over local taxes, which are green, and organizations of local governments with jurisdiction over school education, which are yellow. Each organization is vertically related to each other and participate in council for promoting tax education in its region. The members participating in each council communicate on a daily basis in order to implement tax education. The rightmost, the related organizations are examples of participating organizations. Well, by the way, sorry for the small font. It may be difficult for you to understand, but I do apologize. And the next slide, please. Yes, in Japan, there are organizations related to tax administration as shown in this slide. As part of their role, they cooperate with the NTA in tax education. Each organization has its own membership of individuals or corporations and operates on the basis of membership fees collected from its members. It is important to note that these organizations do not receive any budgetary support from the NTA. The organization can be a voluntary organization or public interest corporation that has been certified as such. In addition to participating in the Council for Promoting Tax Education, each organization provides lecturers when tax education classes are held at schools. These organizations also produce supplementary educational materials and conduct their own activities, such as collecting postcard and calligraphy materials related to taxes from children, holding a quiz contest on taxes at local festivals, and so on and so on. In this way, each organization actively cooperates with the NTA because its members have high level of tax understanding. Additionally, the NTA and each organization communicate on a daily basis to deepen their understanding of taxation and tax education and build trust with each other. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. This is an introduction to the specific efforts of the NTA, National Tax Agency. The first is tax education classes. As part of tax education at schools, the NTA employees and tax accountants are dispatched to schools to hold tax education classes to teach students the significance and the role of taxes. In these classes, educators use animated videos and supplementary materials created by the NTA. Educators also use items such as magnetic sheets with pictures of schools and hospitals and police stations as examples of essential social institutions built by public funds. These activities, well, some of which are really interactive, show young students to look for things built with tax fund and gradually let them understand the importance of tax. In the past, teachers of tax education classes were mainly dispatched by the NTA and its local offices. However, recently, employees of local governments and tax accountants have been dispatched more frequently. This is because the government of Japan has encouraged related organizations to provide lecturers for tax education classes based on the idea that all of society should participate in tax education. In the year 2019 fiscal year, about 44,000 lecturers were sent to teach tax education classes, out of which about 35,000, which is almost 80%, were non-NTA employees. Since school education started in April in Japan, local council for promoting tax education conducts a survey of schools' requests for tax classes, usually from February to March. This means tax education classes can start anytime after April. Based on the request from schools, each council selects lecturers to be dispatched from among its members, and the selected lecturers hold meetings with school teachers about the schedule and the content of the classes. At the end of the class or at a later date, students and teachers who have attended the classes are asked to complete questionnaires about the class content, teaching materials, etc., and the results are evaluated and used to improve future classes. Next slide, please. Yes. In accordance with educational guidelines, which are the standard for school education in Japan, special tax education seminars are held for people involved in the education sector. These seminars are mainly comprised of school teachers with the aim of further enhancing tax learning in school education. In the seminar, practical examples of tax education are presented by school teachers who are already involved in tax education. Additionally, experts are invited to the seminar to share the current status of tax education and other useful information. Next slide, please. Lastly, I would like to explain the tax essay contest. As part of its tax education program, the National Tax Agency of Japan, in cooperation with related private organizations, has collected tax-related essays from junior high and high school students every year since 1962. The students who write excellent essays are presented with a certificate and a commemorative gift. We believe that writing essays is an effective approach because it allows students to think about taxation. Students talk about their essays with their parents and others around them and think about what the role tax plays in society and why it is necessary. The NTA promotes these essays using posters and leaflet, as you see on the example, on one of the example in the screen. Sorry, but they are written in Japanese. The poster contains application guidelines, and 4-page leaflet contains an application guidelines and additional information such as the current situation of national budget. The introductory page of the National Tax Agency website also contains information about essay contest. The theme of the essay differs between junior high school and high school students. Junior high school students can write about anything related to taxes. High school students write about topics that touch on having thought about the significance and the role of taxes, such as their thoughts about the meaning and the role of tax through their own experience in relation to society, or their thoughts about tax-related news and current taxation systems, or their thoughts about the future of society from a tax perspective. Since it is common for students to write tax essay for their homework during their summer vacation in July and August, we prepare posters and leaflet by May. Essays are submitted by September, evaluated, and the winning essays are announced and awarded usually in November. Next slide, please. This table shows the number of schools and number of essays submitted in the last 3 years. In 2021 fiscal year, there are about 8,000 schools participated and 630,000 essays were submitted by junior high school and high school students. In the last fiscal year, the winning essays were written on the following themes: taxes for the reconstruction of earthquake-affected areas, taxes that function as a source of energy for the society, and sake tax, which is a liquor tax, and the pride of people involved in liquor brewing. Next slide, please. And this concludes my presentation today. And it's not really easy to talk about everything within 10 minutes, but I hope my presentation has been informative and helpful. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimushi. I do confirm that it was very helpful and it was exhaustive and very interesting. So thank you so much. Let me now introduce Mr. Kabo Redone, Head of Taxpayer and Trader Education and Knowledge Management at the South African Revenue Service. So Redone, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Program Director and fellow colleagues on the call. My name is Rebone Kabo. I'm the Head of Taxpayer and Trader Education and Knowledge Management. I'm going to take you through a bit of what we do in South Africa. And this year we're celebrating 25 years of existence as an institution. Next slide, please. What we have done in the past 2 years, we have redeveloped our strategy and our vision today. We have started to say to ourselves, we want to be a smart, modern SARS with unquestionable integrity, trusted and admired. So therefore, as an organization, we wanting to go digital and modern as much as we can, but not forgetting our taxpayers who are also not able to connect with smart devices, for example. Next slide, please. Our mandate, we want to make provision for the efficient and effective administration of the revenue collection system of South Africa through different legislation as stated. Our clarity of purpose in terms of our mandate, whilst our mandate is to collect revenues due, ensure optimal compliance with tax and customs legislation rules and legislation, we provide a customs service to optimize revenue, border protection, facilitate legitimate trade. So we also exist to serve the higher purpose for our communities. We enable government to build a capable state that fosters sustainable economic growth and social development that serves the well-being of all South Africans. So with this statement, it is where education is embedded, because we want to make sure that the whole of society from cradle to grave understand our mandate and they know how it impacts their lives. Next slide, please. Our vision as an education team, what we wanting to achieve is to advance clarity and certainty of tax and trader obligation through education, as such, improving the taxpayer experience through burden reduction efforts through our taxpayer and trader service, resulting in improved compliance and revenue realization. So what does this mean? What it means is our education is data-driven, evidence-based education needs. We divide our population by segment and by different products, meaning tax products. And we have a strong focus on education-related research and analysis in order to continuously improve education content informed by evidence. So when we do our needs assessment from the community and also from our tax-paying communities, we ensure that our themes are related to their needs. We provide a clear and easy to understand education content based on behavioral insights, principles of behavior change. So we have a unit that deals specifically with behavioral insights to nudge the taxpayers to do the right thing or to help them understand the process. We are developing a fully digitalized education program where different segments of our taxpayers are developing programs that we convert to digital to ensure that at least we can be able to educate, especially during COVID season. We actually endeavor to be on time and relevant with relevant education content, have strong partnership and alignment with internal divisions and also external organizational bodies, especially the ones with the SMME, large businesses and different associations, where they can assist us in making sure our mandate is delivered. We endeavor to monitor and evaluate part of education value chain, as monitoring and evaluation has been seen to be a difficult thing to do in education. Next slide, please. I just want to share with you some of the tailored education workshop that we do, the types of tailored interventions offered by us. We have in-house workshops where taxpayers are invited through text messages and quarterly published schedules on our SARS website for them to follow what we do. On our website, we also have a school education program that is digitalized for learners and for teachers, where teachers can access the material and use it to educate their taxpayers and also their students. We also have off-site external workshop on the premises of any stakeholder. For example, the SMMEs in different industry, they call us and they also assist us in educating the taxpayers as well. Last year, we conducted many webinars, basically because of COVID. We wanted to continue with our mandate. We advertised a lot of our webinars on YouTube and other social medias for targeted taxpayer population on specific tax topics. This was very relevant in last year during COVID. What we did, we conducted needs assessment to our taxpayers, especially the SMME, by asking them how else do they want to be educated? And what came out as a theme, they said that they wanted to be educated at the comfort of their house when they come back from home, and therefore they can be having access to technology, and also in the language that they prefer. We offered that, and the topics that they selected were the ones that we educated. And the panel for discussions were based on their themes that they selected, and that was a huge success during COVID. We also have a cradle to grave school education program, which focuses on fiscal and financial education. We're wanting to make sure that taxes is embedded in the financial education, because we believe that for a person to understand fiscal literacy or to be literate fiscally, they need to understand financial education. So we are using the OECD framework to be able to make sure that that is embedded in the financial education as well. We have formed partnership with different financial institutions to offer the education program, and it has been a success, especially for the learners. What we have done, because we have an objective as an organization to have what we call ability to have taxpayers help themselves, we have a self-help kiosk. We introduced about 34 kiosks to the public to help themselves with easy, at no cost, cost to the fiscus, for them to do basic interaction with our organization. The purpose is to reduce the queues in the service channel, in the contact center, and the branches that we have. And we also have mobile units, wherein this is our purpose is to go into the communities wherein they, for example, have to travel 200 kilometers to go to a tax office. And with this mobile units, we're meeting them halfway. And in that, we educate, we make them aware of their obligation, and we help them with the filing of their taxes. So the next slide, please. This is just an example of what we have done for different segments of
Voici un exemple de ce que nous avons fait pour différentes catégories des communautés.
Workshops.
Nous avons des ateliers d'éducation.
School community program where we teach about tax morality, curriculum-related program, life skills. At higher level, at the university level, we teach them about tax registration process and their obligation, especially those who finishing the universities, so that they can register for their taxes. We've got tailored programs by product and segment, for example, for different taxes, turnover tax, VAT, provisional tax, company income taxes, that helps different companies based on their needs that we conducted from a research perspective. Our tailored programs are basically PAYE, VAT, and SITE. So the tailored programs also includes radio interviews, changes to all tax types, especially during the financial year. When we finish the financial year, what happens next is during the budget speech, when changes are made, legislative changes, we actually use them to educate our taxpayers in terms of what we do. Just as an example, the mobile tax unit that we have done is trying to make it easy for taxpayers and traders to comply with their obligation. We align our service to multi-channel offering that delivers consistent quality service, empower taxpayers to select the most efficient approaches. Our digital channels or services that we use, we want to make sure our taxpayers migrate to Mobi app. We have got apps, and we have what we call SaaS online query system, where you can query on the website before you go to any contact center or our branch and ask us what exactly is it that I can do to file, and that on the system you'll get the answer before you go to the branch. The purpose of this initiative is basically to educate and provide clarity of tax obligation, encourage taxpayers to migrate to various digital platforms and voluntary compliance, and raising public awareness about the work that we do. Next slide, please. And that should be the last slide. In terms of the webinars that we conducted, this was a huge success in the COVID times. We had live webinars, and we had about number of subscribers that were over 1.1 million, and number of viewers to date, we've got 39,000, for example, in a day or so, with all the videos that we have created, the how-to videos, and we are on LinkedIn, and we are also on we're developing a TikTok approach, and we are using YouTube to educate. So in our view, we're thinking going digital will assist us to migrate into a smart modern SARS, and also assisting our taxpayers to migrate with us. Thank you. This is all from SARS. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabo, for your very interesting presentation and well-documented presentation. So, on ne va pas avoir assez de temps, donc.
We won't have enough time for the Q&A session since we are reaching the end of this session, which was very rich. I would like to thank the different speakers, Mrs. Issa, Mr. Kimochi, and Dr. Cabo, for sharing with us the experience of their countries in terms of taxpayer education. As we could see, there's a wide array of approaches, of publics, and that's why these initiatives are particularly interesting in educating taxpayers in order to encourage and increase tax compliance. I want to thank the participants. There were many of them this afternoon following this session, which clearly shows the interest in the topic of educating taxpayers. This is very satisfying, and we will continue our work on this at OECD. I would also like to thank our donors who help us continue to work on those very interesting topics, and also to continue our activity as part of the Development and International Relations Department towards developing countries that we support. So thanks to our donors. As a conclusion, I would like to remind you that this report we talked about today, and that includes the different initiatives that were presented by Togo, Japan, and South Africa, is available in our publication in French, Spanish, and English on the OECD website. Apologies for this few minutes delay, but I invite you to stay in the room for the next session, which will be just as interesting, and during which we will talk about training. Have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of the day on tax and development. Thank you. Goodbye.